Grammar School, this is UBoat. We're continuing with part 2 of our senior member CFthenatural's pre-record session. And we're going to get to the action right away. On table number 1, we have Jack 9 deuce 5. That's an easy fold from the big blind. And as you saw in part 2, I think CFthenatural is opening with the proper starting hands, which is very good. And I think it's just a matter of getting used to seeing 4 cards along with the board texture to play a little bit more correctly so that he will be crushing these stakes. And I think he can easily crush it because his background in poker is just, I think it's just spot on, especially if you read his hand analysis on the cash forms. And table number 2, 4, 5, 10, 5. When you have these paired cards, it really decreases the strength of any hand. If that hand was say 4, 5, 6, 10, or better 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 4, 5, 6, 10. I mean, from the button, it's definitely worth opening, but at middle position, a good fold. And as you saw on part 1 of his sessions at Nevada, they seem to have very loose passive, weak tight players playing these tables. And 7, queen, 8, ace, 8 suited ace. That's a fold from the small line. And yeah, and I think the Bovada tables are no need to really table stack at these stakes because they're very loose passive. I think just as passive as these stakes at Poker Stars. And we always want to be slightly ahead of their starting hand range and also have aggression and be slightly more aggressive than these passive players. Then we can take down uncontested pots, which will add up quite a bit to anyone's win rate. But I think at the beginning of, well, you know what, when this guy opened, player number 2 opened pre-flop, I think he had a very strong starting range, and I think he hit this flop very well. And I think a lot of players at these stakes make the mistake of checking back as a sign of weakness. It's not always necessarily true, especially when they have these tag stats like 27, 13. And I just think turn number 4 is going to just be off his hand. And 7, 4, 8, 3, it's a chunky hand. The only way we're going to see the flop is if we see the flop cheap everyone again. If there's any reason we're going to fold that hand. And table number 1, I think this player number 4 is going to be off his chips to player number 2. Whoa, and table number 2 is really interesting. We have a very interesting flop. We have to keep in mind that, remember, pre-flop, the flop was multi-way. It was a limp pot. Although it was a limp pot, it was multi-way. There's 4 other players. And we flopped the nut straight of 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Although we flopped the nut straight, there's a flush draw there. And since if it's heads up, I think it's very correct to bet out. But when it's multi-way, especially if you were playing against say regs and tags, I think it would be best to check back and see if the turn improves our equity. And what I mean by improving our equity is if there's a non-heart card, any non-heart card will improve our equity on that turn, and we can get our stacks in. Whereas if we bet and we get re-raised, we're placed in a very difficult spot. So, see, what I'm going to do is this, to show you how most players, most new players in Omaha, when they hit the nut straight on the flop, they think they're crushing other people's range, but they're not. They're not proving right now because they see, especially multi-way when there's a possibility of having a flush draw there. So our hero, CFthenatural, has 7, 4, 8, 3. So 7 spades, 4 spades, 8 clubs, 3 spades, and that was 6 hearts, 9 clubs, and what was it? 5 hearts. 5 hearts. And what we're going to put maybe one or two of their other opponent on just any heart flush draw. So this can be any crappy hand. So it could be like deuce 3, king 10. Okay, and that can be deuce 3 of hearts. And this, the percentage, it shows you that we're not crushing anyone. We're basically flipping, just barely ahead. So that is the reason why. I guess loose passive is okay to bet full pot. If you do bet, you need to bet full pot for value. If you get raised, I was trying to consider folding because this hand, CFthenatural hand, has absolutely no backup. What I mean by backup is there's no backdoor straight draw there's no backdoor to a better straight draw or no backdoor flush draw. So this is a hand that for new players to PLO, this is where they get stacked easily. So they'll re-raise and they'll repot it, get it all in, and the other player will outtry. But let's get back to full screen. But against this loose passive player, I think there's nothing wrong with potting it and slowing down on the turn if the heart hits. So let's see what he does. Taking notes. Oh yeah, player number 2 on that table 1, remember? I think we have that's maybe the trips or maybe the boat. Let's see what happens here. So he does this. He does bet, which is I can't blame him. This is a pot. And the flavor folds. And if anyone calls, I'm going to put them on a flush draw. I mean, it's rare that these players at the micro 6 raises with a flush draw. You only see that at the higher ones, like 100 PLO. Oh, and a nice hand here too. And on table number 1, we have 10, king, queen, 9, suited to the king. If anyone open raises or limps, we're going to raise for value no matter what, because we also have we have power position since we're at the bottom. And if anyone limps, you gotta raise for value. And if anyone falls to it, you have to raise to take down the blinds. Because this is going to flop well. There's a good chance of hitting a straight draw, flush draw, top 2 pair. It just hits the flop so well. So definitely a very strong hand, although we do have a gap in the middle with the missing jack, right? It's not a gap at the top, and also we do have the power position, which compensates for that gap, and we can play position with that hand, especially when we hit the flop hard. And we will flop, and we'll hit it fairly often on that. So let's continue with okay. Yeah, and 9 hits the turn, and I think that doesn't really change our equity, so it's definitely well worth getting our stacks now bet close to 5. Oh, and on table number 1, he limps, which I didn't like. I think that's a hand that's strong enough to raise for value, and it's another deposit right here, and it's a common mistake by new players to PLO. I mean, a lot of new players, they do overplay any paired hands like queen, queen, or jack, jack, or king, king, and 6 hand. When it comes to any rundowns, everyone plays these type of hands very passively, and I did that too. I'm guilty of doing that when I first started playing PLO. But you need to get used to raising these hands. These are just strong hands. I think personally I would prefer this hand over any ace hands. So that's how strong these hands are. So table number 2 again, remember that 9, pairing of the 9 doesn't really change anything. We want to bet close to pot, and you have to fold if there's any re-raise. But with, when we bet close to pot, that's going to be about close to 90 cents. And if this short stacker raises, we're definitely not going to fold. But if he raises, we'll definitely fold there. But let's see what happens. Okay, we gotta go back to table number 1. We get 7, 8, 9, very wet board. We only have top pair with the gutter. We don't really have any. We're not drawing to another flush. We do have a backdoor flush draw, but we don't have too much equity right now, especially multi-way. So it's best to just check back, and then if the turn doesn't improve, we can just give up on that. Yeah, and he wins the pot on table number 2. Let's read his notes of what he said. So he says, dealt 7-4-8-3 in the big blind. I flopped on that straight. I bet pot for protection as it's 5-way hand, and there's a flush draw. And remember, what we have to be aware of at these stakes, or even at hard stakes of Problem in Omaha, is you can't price anyone out of any most draws on the flop. Even if they have a naked flush draw, these plays will never fold. So that's why sometimes it's better to check back. And because the turn is where you can kind of price out any draws. But no, it's playing against loose passive players, so I think betting for the pot is good. I do not want to just check and let it check around and let someone see the turn for a small bet. Well, if it's reds, there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's probably a more plus EV move to check back if you're surrounded with regulars or tags, but with loose passive again, that's perfectly fine. I get called in 2 spots. The turn pairs the board, and I bet again as I do not want to give a free card. Good, and that's perfectly correct there on that turn. I want value for what is still often the best hand, and I totally agree with him there. And I can get called by worse hands and many draws, true. Everyone folds, but I would probably have folded had one of them raised me on this pair board. Well, to the short stackers, I would probably call. That's the other one at $3. I would definitely fold. But I would rather bet fold than check call here. I think this is a very important sentence, especially on that turn. If he had just check called, you have no idea where he's at. So I think it's better to bet fold because you know that you're repping the boat. And if someone actually has a boat, they're going to re-raise you, or they're going to call and you can give up on the river. Whereas if you check call, you have no idea where you are. It doesn't really improve your hand, and you would have no idea what their ranges are. So really good analysis, especially on that last part of bet folding is better than check calling, and that's something that you have to do in Parliament quite often. Okay, so let's continue with the video. So table number 1, hopefully, that's definitely worth a call. You need jack, so it's not a club. Will definitely improve your hand. And if a club hits, and any other card than a jack, we're going to give up on that turn. We're going to give up. On table number 2, we're going to fold our 9, 6, 10 king. He calls. I'm going to pause it right here. So we hit the queen of clubs. So there's a mate straight and mate flush out there, and all you have is top to pair. Top to pair in Polynomial is junk. It's not as, whereas in, remember, no limit, I mean, it's not 2 people will fold 2 pairs, whereas in Polynomial, it is junk. There's a mate straight, mate flush. It's best to just give up that hand right now. Hopefully he does, and let's see what happens. So good fold on table number 2. A lot of new players do tend to play this type of hands. And he bets, oh, you know what? Take that back. If he had bet really strong, no, he probably repped the nuts. Maybe the king, suited king, king of clubs. I mean, he might have a king high flush. But he bets really small compared to the size of the pot. So he's probably repping, maybe he has a jack 10, and he's afraid that CFthenatural has a mate flush here. So I think a raise here would be a really good move, especially in position, and he's definitely showing weakness. If he had bet, half pot or greater, I would definitely fold, but that bet is so small, it's just screaming weakness. And CFthenatural has position, and I think a raise of not 60 cents, it's really strong, like 65 to 80 cents, or for pot, maybe 65 to 80 cents would be a nice raise here. Let's see what it does. So he's thinking about it. Checking here would be just bad, especially with the mate flush and straight out there. Awesome. And he raises 75 cents. Good. And if he calls, we got to give up on the river, but hopefully we fold him out. And ace-3-9-7 here, let's go to calm them up. And he folded him out. That's awesome. I thought that was just, that's a play that the power position gives you problem number 9. I can see if the natural read it well, like he saw the small bet size and he raised it because he probably thought that play number 3 had the jack 10 to give him the straight on the flop, but the turn gave him a flush and hit that bet size and just screen weakness, and he took advantage of that. Let's read his notes. That's a really good play on CFthenatural. Says table number 1, I limped behind on the button with 10 king queen 9 single suited. That's not good. I think he should have raised. It's not strong enough to icy raise. Well, it's a very strong hand. That hand is worth raising all day at the button, even when you're out of position. Now we'll get called by everyone. But a good hand to see flop in position. Good. That's true because it will hit the flop really hard. I flop a decent draw and call a turn for some bet. Good. The turn gives me top 2 pair, but does bring third cloud and thus completes the first draw. True. The villain bets really small, 1/4 pot. And my read is that he is afraid of the flush because he would bet more if he had the flush. Awesome read. He's spot on right there. So I don't know what's in your bluff raise him and he folds. Great. I feel I made a very good read here and took advantage of having position. Can't make this move out of position, but obviously if he had called my raise or re-raised me, I would have to give up. I think he made just a spot on move right there. I think he played that hand perfectly. So now let's go back to the video. So we'll definitely call the nut at the button. We do have position here. 5, 4, 6, 10. That's definitely fold. I believe playing that. We do have reverse implied odds if we do hit the straight. Good fold on table number 1. On table number 2, it's multi-way. We have position. If you get checked, I think I would probably bet out here. We do have a backdoor flush draw, and everyone checks behind, and everyone's playing face out. I'll definitely bet close to pot and give up if anyone calls or raises us. I think that's the only way to take down that uncontested pot. But now, on the turn, we have to give up. Now we did have a gutter there too. Now on the turn, we can't call any bits here. So we'll give that up. The short stackers. And that Bovada, I think, kind of sucks. Like you can't, and although you can write the notes, we won't be able to keep them permanently in our account because I think when you play a new session, because all previous notes gets deleted, which kind of sucks. So I'll definitely write notes on the players during a session, but you'd have to rewrite notes again on the next session. So that's a little bit of a hassle. But I do like the anonymous tables. I think it allows recreational players to have a chance. 7, 6, 10, I'd fold that. Pairing number 6 really sucks. Again, it weakens the strength of our hand. Definitely not even worth calling them up. Good fold at the cutoff. And again, at Bovada, I think CFthenatural mentioned that he cannot take a slug. Well, I wouldn't worry about it, especially when these tables are soft as these. And I think any tables, I mean, that's an easy fold on table number 1. I think any table that you sit in at these stakes, whether it's 2, 5, or 10 PLO, whether it's Bovada or at PokerStars, no need to really table select because you're going to find these kind of very loose passive tables, players at these tables. It's just a matter of, remember, again, just being slightly ahead of their starting hand range and also being slightly more aggressive than these passive players. which will, again, help you take those uncontested pots, which do accumulate fairly fast. 5, Jack, 10, deuce. That's an easy fold from middle position. Yeah, and as you can see in Portland or Omaha at these stakes, you're gonna see so many pots multiple way, like that one, like 5 players, this one 4 players. And remember, most of these are limp pots, so with any strong starting hands, I mean, if you hit the flop, you're gonna be able to take these pots down, uncontested. Deuce 4, 3, 7, easy fold, maybe even maybe a fold even at the bottom because reverse implied odds right there. Even if you hit straight. Yeah, and I don't see too many players playing back, and you won't see that too much at these stakes. 7, 10, queen, 3 under the gun, easy fold. And Charles, CFthenatural is not getting dealt very many playable hands in the first session, and I think, and hopefully we do get dealt a little more hands on the second session, so that we can see some more spots. Yeah, I guess we can label these guys, but we can't keep our labels permanently on Bovada. And one thing to remember when you're playing these, when you're playing any Paladin Omaha is, remember, no limit. I mean, you'll have some players like 80 to 100% betting the flop, but in Paladin Omaha, don't keep that down. Like, if you keep that to, like, say, 50 to 70% is optimal, because you don't want to c-bet too much, because that's definitely c-betting too much on the flop. It's just it's also a leak in Omaha. There's a lot of people, even with strong hands, that check back. It's not slow playing. It's just trying to improve your equities. 10 ace, 8, 10 definitely worth a call with these passive players, except for number 2. I think if number 2 raises 3x plus, I definitely fold. But if everyone limps, I would definitely call it. Or if any of these loose passive players open 3x, I'll definitely call that because I think it crosses their range. Except for player number 2. Table number 2, that's an easy fold with deuce 3, jack 4. Man, these are really crappy cards I'm reading here. And we do have the glider, but it's just a glider. I'll just check back since we're out of position. Not worth trying to take down this flop. I mean, if that ace was suited to the diamonds, that would be definitely worth getting it in on this flop with a flush draw in the corner. 15x. And as you can see at these stakes, the only significant stats were Jack 9, Jack 7. I'll call, and all the way at the small blind with his loose passive player, I'll call to any open raise with that hand. We do have a chance to hit top set, and I can hit the flop really well. I'll definitely call that from this passive player. But nothing bad was folding at the small blind. But something to know that, I think this is well ahead of this guy's range, even though he raises to 22 cents. He calls to. Maybe it's good thing for it definitely didn't hit our range. Again, we get a pairing of 8s, which really sucks. That really weakens our hand. But if we fold it 2, I'll definitely raise that against this passive player. Slipped in, yeah, even if you're pricing down for that hand. The only way I would call that is my, say, 8, let's say an ace. So we get suited to the ace. What is the street? Deuce 10, 3, 8 on the button. Not even worth calling any limp. Easy fold. Yeah, these, I don't know what, too bad Spender didn't have these, had that, this videos. If we can just see what 25 PLO would be like a provider. King deuce 7-5 is, there's no suitedness, there's no connectivity with the hands, easy fold at the button. Not even worth playing these cards in position. So you're not going to flop anything there. 6, 8 cents. This is strong bet. Easy fold, but he's a short stacker. He could have almost anything there. Yeah, I just don't respect short stackers too much. If I had like top two pairs, I'll just get them with that. Wow. Yeah, that's too gappy. Definitely not worth the call. If that deuce was maybe a 7, definitely worth the call. We're not getting dealt too many good hands here. Even being aware of these players, kind of very easy what they're doing. They're coming down with 2 pairs. Maybe I think on the first video, I think this team number, play number 1 was called. They played the trips passively on the river. They tend to call down with the top 2 pair or bottom 2 pair or the second street. 3, 7, 6, 5. That's a crappy hand. That middle position also the 4 of diamonds, that really sucks. It decreases the chance of like flush, so that's an easy fold. Table number 2 is 4, 9, 6, easy fold. Very gappy, very unconnected, very uncoordinated card. But you do see a lot of players at least is calling with like the hand that we had in table number 1 and table number 2. So if we have play those starting hands, strong starting hands, we'll be well ahead of most of these players' rings and just crush them when we get to tops like those. I think for players like CFthenatural, I think once he gets a little more volume at PLO, I think he'll realize that he'll probably be crushing these stakes because I know, all of you probably seen his post on the cash history, the hand analysis threads, and his analysis of other members' hands are very solid. I really enjoy reading his analysis of the no limit hands also. So I think with a guy like CFthenatural with his background in no limit, I think he would have an easy transition into a limit 1-1. Queen 10-8, that's definitely an open raise. There's some connectivity with our 10-8, and we have unsuited queens here, so definitely a card that's going to play well against these guys. We can hit the flop very well too. Now, like this, at early position, he's he's raising full pot, which is good because when you're out of position, you want to get full value from the strong starting hands that you're going to start out with out of position. And we have deuces. It's a very dry board, definitely worth trying to take the pot down with our queens. Table number 2, that's an easy fold from under the gun. And we want to take the pot down. I think when you have a dry flop like that and we have a open pair, we want to bet out and try to take the flop down. Remember, it's not betting. Technically, it's not betting to bluff or as a value. It's just trying to take that pot down. Trying to get everything to fold. And he calls, and we hit the nuts. And this is awesome because there's a made flush. And what I would do is probably bet half pot because he has, let's just pause it here. He has $3.40. So if he, maybe not half pot, maybe like 80 cents. And then maybe half pot on the river so that you can spaz the rest of his stacks in. Because remember, the trouble with these kind of boards is there's a possible bullet and make flush. And every time when we bet full pot, scare these passive players away. But let's see how he plays this. So he bets it close to pot, so the 4/5 pot. Oh yeah, 4/5 pot. It's not bad. Oh, awesome calls. But here, remember, I'll just bet like $1.15 and get him to spaz out rest of the stocks. Because if you bet for pot, it usually scares these passive players away, especially on the river. Yeah, and it just made it too exact, like $2.03. Well, yeah, $2.02. But well played. Nothing wrong with getting value on these passive players. Let's see what he wrote on this hand. I raise with Queen 10-8 and get $2 after they both check. I decide to see that with deuces jack flop with my overcard. Awesome. Valuing for protected. Well, you're trying to bet on those flops. You're trying to bet just to take the pot down. Okay? And the turn is queen to give me a full house and completes the flush. A great card. Awesome. I bet for value. I think it was kind of big and he calls, but that was good. And I put him all around the river by default. So I think next time it's better to look at his stacks and try to get the half or maybe 2/3 of his stacks and get him to spew the rest of his stack. So I thought overall very well played. Let's continue. As I mentioned before, that's an easy fold. I would definitely call if we're 100%. We have a suited ace. We have suited. Having suited ace is just so powerful sometimes. And on this one, we're going to give that up. We just totally missed the flop. And as I mentioned on part one, I do look at everyone's threats, especially on the blood. And if I see anyone else playing Paladin Omaha and you're consistently posting hands at our grander school forums, you never know, you'll get a PM message from me for a session review. It'll be free, and that's probably part of the big bonus of, part of the bonus, I don't know, big bonus, part of the bonus of being a member at grander school. Not only do you get your hands evaluated by many of the instructors here, you can get a free session review. Never know. 5-9, king 7. That's a fold from the small blind. Easy fold. So there's double suited. A lot of new players think that just the fact that it's double suited gives them, for some reason, some great equity to win, but they don't. That's just an awful card. It's very disconnected. 7-6-10 queen. I mean, the hand speaks for itself. It's an awful card. There's no suitedness. It's very gappy, very disconnected. Remember that the keyword is connectivity. We might have like nice rundowns with either with no gap or gap in the bottom or even the middle is not too bad. So that's hand. But any gap in the top, especially when you're out of position, you really want to fold out the hand. The only time when you want to play a rundown with a gap in the top is when you have position, like when you play from the button. And 4-3 king deuce. Well, that's a fold, especially against this player number 2 open raise. Again, remember, just be wary about these low connected cards. There's high chance for reverse implied odds. In this one, we're going to definitely call this hand in position. So I say fairly strong hand. I hate the gap of 8, but now ace 7, 6-9. The position always compensates for any of the weakness of the hand. And this is, it's a marginal hand, definitely worth calling in position. We can see the flop. Multi-way, and if we hit it hard, we can win a big pot. Deuce 3, king 4, that's an easy fold. And it's a very dry flop. However, this multi-way, even though we're in position, I'm going to check back. And I really think someone has a flush draw or queen XXX, and we don't want to take shots. If that ace of clubs was ace of hearts, I would definitely take a shot at that flop to take it down. But on this one, no, we got nothing. Let's check back. Awesome, checks back. And you know what? That's a dangerous card for CFthenatural. A lot of new players at the moment, they tend to bet up because they pair the ace, but that's a mistake. So there's a flush draw out there, and someone could have next it, and he is making a mistake. That's definitely a mistake. I would just check back and give it up. He probably has a flush draw, 2 pair, like he has ace 4. maybe the nuts, the boat, but definitely nuts and X. And I think flush draws after 2. He bets, and we're forced to fold. And hopefully he folds, because remember, pairing of the ace is chunky. It's not a great hand in public. It's not like having aces in no limits. You need to fold that. And he folds. You know what? Maybe he has nuts on this hand. Let's see. So, yeah, it does. I flat call a min raise on the button with 769 ace as it is suited to the ace, and I will have position. Correct. I check through on the flop and turn. So I bet on the turn with my 2 pair, as no one seems to have anything that's now. Oh, he did have 2 pairs. Sorry, my mistake. 2 pair. Oh yeah, with the queen. No, that's not good. Queen. Let's see. 2 pair, as no one seems to have anything much, and I don't want to give another free card. Well, the thing is, I mean, there's a possible trip, possible boat out there. I mean, your hand is chunky at best. Remember this pot limit normal, not no limit. 2 pairs is almost worthless, especially on a made boat or a possible trip, or even a better 2 pairs. So the short stack calls, and then he bets pot on the river on the pair board, I think. It's quite likely that he's slow playing queens, and so I think it's correct. Yeah, I think he did have queens. But he's not slow playing. Remember, these are loose passive players, even if they have a strong hand. As you saw in part 1, where the guy had, like, I think, trips of kings on the river. They can play it passively. Remember, it's just they're the player type. They tend, even if they have the nuts sometimes, like I've seen it before, where they had claws and they just check back on the river, and I bet, and they call, and they had quads to take down the pots. So just be careful about them. And also these passive players. So let's get on. Queen, king, 7, 4. That's easy fold. That very well connected. That's easy fold. The cutoff. If it's suited to the king, maybe it's double suited. Maybe we could open, but no, these guys are going to call, so maybe not. So definitely an easy fold with that hand. Wait, why are they taking so long to make a decision here? Okay, 3, 5, queen, jack, easy fold from under the gun. Just not very well connected. And as you can see again, so many limpers. And you want to take notes on players that limp folds. And they are the cash machines. This is the drive. Okay, this is yeah, I'm going to stop here. Remember, we have very loose passive players on table number 2. And when we have a hand like this, ace, jack, king, 8, although we have a dangler here, and the king, jack, ace is kind of connected, although we do have 3 of hearts, which decreases our chance of hitting a flush draw. This suited to the ace. So this is actually, with the type of players that we have on the table, it's actually a very strong hand. So if this player number 6, 38-0, I think, I mean, if he limps, we'll definitely raise for value. Even if he open raises, I think this is a hand that crushes most of these players' range, and I think that'd be worth 3 betting for value if player number 6 open raise, and if we hit the flop hard, let's just give us jacks and give us them. But you see what happens. This type of hand that a lot of players need to kill, they limp call all the time, but it's and that should be raised, especially when he limps. I'll raise that even if we're out of position. Remember, we're only out of position against player number 2. Yeah, that should have been open raise for sure. And he min raises, and we'll definitely call that. And once they min raise, I'm gonna just call that. I'm not gonna raise that. Let me see what happens. Ooh. And table number one's kind of interesting. We have dangler 4, but we have very well connected card of 8, 9, 10. I think if you're lent here, I'll just call. But if I run this guy, the small blind limps, I'll definitely raise for value if this heads up. Even if we open raise by 3x, I'll definitely consider re-raising that hand. But let's see what happens. Yeah, these are like slow decision makers. I mean, what are they going to do? Yeah, so check back here, that's fine. And on that flop, it's not that great. We have ace and king of spades on the board. We have 10 high spades. I mean, we have third nuts basically. So third nut flush draw, and we have, we do have a gutter with a queen, but some can, we would have a sucker straight. So I don't like to bet that. I would just check back and see if our hand improves. And I don't think our hand can improve on this hand. If you had, say, like, if that was like queen of hearts or jack of hearts, that would be a lot better. But with having the third nut flush and we have a possible sucker straight, I'll just play this passively and fold anyways. I mean, look decent with that flop, but I think it would be spewing money to bet out on the turn or on the river on that. So let's continue, and let's see what table number. And this hand, remember we have loose passive players. And I'll lead out. I'll definitely bet something close to like 35 cents and build a pot so that if we hit the flush or maybe sometime that's going to give us our backdoor, say 10 hits here and we have the inside wrap, I'm going to get that and build a pot right away right now so that we can stack on these passive players. And if someone re-raises us, I'm going to get a stack. Oops. And I'm going to get a stack in right away, especially against these players. So, because there's so many cards that can improve our hand, like any Broadways and hearts. So, I'll just get my stack in on that one. Because someone could easily have some queen XXX hand. And I'll just open it in. Even against a king. We are doing pretty well, equity-wise, although we haven't made a flush draw. We do have a backdoor. No, we have a backdoor. And backdoor draws are so powerful in problem. Oh my, you have to be aware of that. Like we have a backdoor straight draw with 4-5. We have backdoor. I mean, if say whether say like a 10 hits there, we have the inside wrap. Even if you have jack there, you can hit top 2 pairs. So many cards that can improve a hand. So definitely, I bet to build a pot on that, and especially against these loose passive players. I hope I'm not repeating myself too much. And good check. That's an awesome check back. There's a lot of players, they think they have something back here, but they don't. And there's definitely a mistake to bet on that flop. Especially multi-way, with almost everyone playing. And what is it? Definitely we're going to check back here on table number 1, which is really good. So, and also we're going to check back on the river, even if we hit a 10 or something like that. I'm going to check back this. There's a mate straight or mate flush out there. I mean, definitely mate flush out there. We're going to check back and see the showdown cheap. And again, on table number 2, we did not flush. So I think that's why it would have been good to build the pot early, because we do have a lot of equity with our nutted flush draw. And now it's a matter of, what's the bet sizing to get these players to call? And I think the bet sizing, same again, like since he checked back on the flop on the turn, I bet something close to 35 cents. And hopefully we get multiple calls on that turn. And on the river, even if it pairs, I'm not going to be afraid. I'm going to bet close to say 2/3 pot and try to get calls. And if it pairs, the only card that sucks would be if it pairs and we bet out and we get re-raise, it's definitely a fold. But that's something that we do have to learn to do. Is with the polynomial, I learn to fold the netted hand. And I hate this. I hate this bet on the board. They could easily have Jack Queen High. Instead of seeing this showdown cheap, we turn our hand into kind of a bluff, I think. Yeah, and Jack High flush. And let's see the moves on that hand. That. Yeah. But that's definitely a mistake, getting out on that river. I mean, you got the through net flush, and so easy you have queen jack. I know they can call down with top two pair, or any two pairs, or even straight, but I think that was a mistake there. I think it's such a wet board that you should have just took back and see a cheap showdown, even though the pot was small for the persons. So 35 cents, perfect bet sizing, easy fold on table number 1. Then you take it down, and let's go back and see his notes on that. So I left behind with ace jack king 8 suited to the ace. Once again, it's not a strong hand to series. I think it's a strong hand to series because remember, we gotta be aware of what type of players we're playing against. On table number 2, we're just surrounded by loose passive players, and that card is so ahead of their range, so we should raise for value whether we're in position or not. We build a big pot against multiple colors. Well, yeah, we should, but you didn't on the flop. But a good hand to see a flop against LP fish. I hit the nut flush on the turn, but for value, but I think 2 mistakes here. I think we should raise for value with that ace jack king 8 suited to the ace hand against these loose passive players. And also you should bet that flop and build it so that when you do hit the flush as you did on the turn, to get your stacks and get more value from these passive players. And I know you know how to play against these passive players. But I think it's the fact that you know, as a new player to Paladin, how do you play with that hand? And when you hit the nut, the naked nut flush draw, when you're playing against loose passive, always bet and build a pot. So when you do hit it, you can really build a pot big and get your stacks in. And if you don't hit it, say on the turn or something else, you can always give up the hand. Let's continue. Table number 1, 7, 10, 3, king, easy fold. Table number 2, 10, 3, 5, 9, easy fold. Yeah, and I think with new players and also players like CFthenatural, it's playing those suited hands, suited ace hands that have like a lot of broadways in it, that's kind of connected, and also especially rundowns, playing those really fast and strong, because you know that you raise for value on those hands. Because in Palanoma, those rundowns are a lot better than, for me personally, it hits the flop a lot better than any aces, XX hands, or any king hands. Yes, we had a couple of interesting hands so far in part 2. And I think he played less than maybe 200 hands, maybe 150 hands. He's doing pretty good. He's up like maybe half a stack, 50 BBs. And I'm just wondering if you can bind for 250 big blinds. Okay, this is a really good kings on table number 1 with 7-6 king double suited. And we have 7-6 that's connected. It would be better to have, say, like 9-8 or 9-10 or jack 10. But 7-6 is really good hand, definitely worth awesome. He raised for value. And I think he raised for value because he had kings, which is very common. but definitely worth a raise. Table number 2, that's a fold. And definitely worth, if they took back, we'll definitely try to take that down. I'm just wondering if that was a 7-6, 9-10, if you would have raised with that. Yeah, definitely, I like this one. I'm going to take that down as a possible straight. We do have to sit in the flush straight, definitely worth taking a shot at taking the pot down. Awesome. Let's see if you have notes on that hand. Sorry, my laptop tend to lag when I take these videos. I'm dealt 7-6 king double suited on the button, so I isolate lower raising for value with a 31-13 number. The number folds, but I get called by small blind and big blind. They both check the 3 deuce 5 flop. You see that with my over paired gut shot and second nut flush shot, awesome. And we take it down. Good. So we'll keep going. And 5 king 8 7. That's a fold. But if that 5 is a 6, we would definitely call him open raise because we do have relative position in these 6 points. Table number 2. That's a fold. We're at small blind. We're out of position. Although we have suited aces. Oh no! This one we might be pricing to call this one. It's debatable. It's good to. It's okay to fold, but it's okay to call that because remember we're priced in. Although we're at small blind, we did have suited aces. But nothing wrong with folding the hand since we're out of position. We did flop that flop hard. Nothing too much going on right now. And I think we do have about less than 50 minutes on Charles's video. And what I noticed at Bovada is people do take their time of making their bets at PokerStars. It seems like they take half the time of the players in Bovada. Yeah, let's make this session very slow. But remember, patience is a virtue, especially in poker. Although we're not dealt very much hand, we don't want to play force. We don't want to be forced to play any marginal hand out of position. It's an easy fold. 8, 6, 9 queen. Really bad hand position. Gap of 7 and 10 jack really makes this hand very weak. And if you haven't watched the starting hands video, I would strongly recommend watching those. Especially when you're a new player to Pot Limit Omaha. Sorry, I'm at the office. I think you can hear the footsteps. There's a staircase to the office representing my office. And those thumb signs are the footsteps of the other business tenants at my office. And we hit the nuts. Number 2. Yeah, so remember, when you're at the small lots, nothing wrong with calling if you priced in. There's so many players coming out away. But nothing bad with calling either. King 8 deuce 9 at the button. That's an easy fold. It's just place where we multi-way or I mean it's not going to hit it very well. So I'm calling it with the deuce and king. Excuse me. I'm going to pause this video just for a moment. I just got to get a glass of water. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. It's kind of surprising how much water you can drink when you're making these videos. And the last thing I want is dry throat. 6 deuce 7 4 on table number 1. That's a fold. Excuse me. And that's actually quite a not bad hand against these players on table number 2. Jack 9 10 5. You could call the limp or even open raise for value with that hand. I would probably prefer to open raise at the cutoff, but nothing wrong with calling. Because I think that hand still is ahead of all these other people's players' range, especially on table number 2. Although we don't have too many hands on, I guess, players table number 2. Now this one we're gonna give that up. Multiple, I'm not gonna bluff on that. I think it hits these players' range really well. So we'll definitely check fold that hand. And on table number 2, King 10 deuce deuce. That's I guess we'll just check. That's what we can do. And we'll fold to that raise by the small back. Then we're gonna check back on table number 2. We're gonna give that up. No point of bluffing that hand, even if he bets 5 cents. And whether you're playing pot limit Omaha or no limit, I know there's these dollar signs out here, but it's probably best to view these things as chips and not be so concerned about how much you win. Just remember, just stick to solid play, and solid play will result in bigger winnings. So, okay, Jack 3, King 3. That's an easy fold from manipulation. And on table number 1, Queen 6, 4, 10 at the small blind. We're going to fold that. And I know I'm being repetitive, but most players who are watching these are going to be beginners at problem Omaha. So when you have those 3 face cards, like 3 clubs here on table number 1, it really decreases the strength of your hand. Likewise on table number 2 with 3 speeds up there. Excuse me. I think we're nearing the end of this video. So far, I think CFthenatural played fairly solid. Like I said before, he's got all the fundamental basics by playing no limit, and it's just learning to read the boards correctly and playing with that through poker tools to determine what kind of equity we have on the flop and the turn and the river. And in polynomial, just remember that the flop club, many people will flip the flop. Where the bets really matter is basically on the turn and the river. And the flop is where you want to build a pot, but the turn is where you make the decision to get your flop, your stacks in, if you're not sure what to do. Deuce ace 4 10, that's an easy fold from under the gun. I guess the only difficult parts were when he flopped a straight on the straight and there was a possible flush draw there. It's just knowing how to play those spots correctly, especially against regulars, and depending on what kind of players you're playing against also. That's really huge too. And also the number of players. And remember, these players, they don't really look at your stack size, so stuff like SPR and stuff. As long as you're aware of it, it's fine, but these players are not aware of it. So I've seen people fold with, say, like 5 blinds left on their stack. So I won't be too concerned about SPR at these stakes too much. 10, Queen, 7, 3, that's an easy fold. That was an easy fold on table number 1. I guess we're seeing the flop here. Oh, this is kind of very similar to the other hand where we had a limp pot and we flopped the nut straight. And this is the same thing again. We flopped the nut straight, and there's a flush draw out there. However, only difference is we do have the third nut flush. However, if this was heads up, I'll get my stack in here with our backup of with our flush draw to the queens. Excuse me. But multi-way, I always discount my third nut flush because any of these players can have the better flush. Either like ace deuce or king deuce to the clubs. So on this hand, again, it's okay to bet full pot. For me, I favor, like with these loose pass players, I tend to favor, it's okay to bet full pot. But, we don't have too many hands on this player number 2 and 3, although they do have really goofy, fishy stats. We only have 6 and 7 hands on them. I would prefer to, and they have position on us, I would prefer to fold. I'm not fold, sorry, check and call the flop if they bet. And if they bet out, I'm going to check the turn again. If they bet again, I'll check fold the turn. And on this one, it's a nasty board. It's a very difficult spot. But I think the correct way to play this is to check call the flop and then to check fold the turn. But if you do want to have a little bit of initiative because they do show loose passive stats, you can. But when you do bet the flop, you have to bet close to full pot. And if any of them calls, you need to give up on that turn, especially if we end up getting clubs here. If there's no clubs, we can get our stacks. But if we end up hitting a club, we're going to have to give up. Okay? So let's see how we play it. Wow, this player number 6 just takes forever. Even on the previous hand, this just takes forever. Could have breakfast, lunch, and dinner while he's trying to make his decision. Take number 2, that's easy for really chunky hand. Okay, now it's Charles's turn, and he bets full pot, which is okay, which is fine. I just prefer to check call. And we get another caller, so 2 callers. Oh boy, and we get the card that we don't want. We hit the club here, and what we want is we want to give up this turn. Either one of these could have a better flush, flush. I know they can call with 2 pairs or some straight, like someone could easily have 10-6, 10 queen without the clubs, but I just get a feeling it's multi-way pre-flop. Just get a feeling one of these players will have a better made flush, so definitely give up that turn. So check fold the turn, hopefully he does. No, I think he's going to bet the turn. He does bet 60 cents to 2/3. And he gets called, and you're going to have to give that up on the river. I know he has less than pot size bet left. You got to check back. Because really these passive players, they're willing to fold that hand if they have nothing. So, if you're going to bet, maybe check call. Maybe he might bet half pot. Something like that. And yeah, he did have the ace. So going back to his hand again, the way he played it, the flop was fine. Betting the full pot on the pot is fine because I can play against this passive player. But if you want to play all the way down to the showdown, it would be better to just maybe check call the turn and check call the river. And maybe since they lose passive, they won't bet as strong. Maybe you would have lost less chips. However, I think the most optimal play would be after you bet full pot on the flop, it would be better to just check fold the turn. And personally, I would favor check calling the flop and check folding the turn. Let's see what his notes are. Oh, this last hand too. Perfect. This is one hand I really feel I misplayed. I get 10 queen 7-3 in the big blind and a 5-way limp pot. And remember that 5-way increased chance that one of those players will have a better mid flush. The flop, and flop the nut straight on the 8-9 jack board. I bet full pot for protection, yeah, and value on a very dry board. I guess that's true against this loose passive player. But remember, as we saw in the previous hand, when someone else has a better flush, I mean, no, your echo's not that high. The turn fills the flush, gives me the third nut flush. It's a tough spot. Yes, it's a very difficult spot on that turn. I don't want to check and give him the initiative. Nah, you need to check. We don't care about initiative in Portland or Omaha. On this kind of hand spot, especially at these micro stakes, you want to play face up. And these players really won't know because they're just looking at their hands. To show that I don't have a strong flush. No, I don't care. Or give him a free card to possibly draw out on me. Or, no. I don't have a lot of hands on him, which is true, but he is 80-0. I don't know if he saw any of those hands I showed on him. I'm not too sure. Should look back, but I think I get called by worse hands here. 2 pair of worse flushes. Yeah, that's true, but the thing was, remember, initially we were multi-way, we were 5-way, and remember the great number of people we had we play a pre-flop, greater chance that they might have a better flush up there. So that's the main reason why I like to check call that flop and check fold the turn. I've seen people all night calling down, betting with any flush 2 pair, which is true. So I bet again and he calls. The river brings a 4th club, but that's not really change anything. And another thing is, we really didn't have too many hands on them. We didn't see any hands I showed them. So we can't remember, each loose passive players are different. And they will call down with different types of hands. And if he didn't show his hand, if he didn't see his hand I showed him, we can't make the assumption that he's like the other loose passives. So remember, that's another really important to consider, that we want to see the hands I showed them so that we can make these bets. I mean, if we saw him showing down, let's say 2 pairs in the previous hand, then we have all the right to bet. But we don't have these. Almost an unknown with loose passive stats. And due to the SPR and my read that he could call with Wilson, I decided to put it all in on the river. And I know the SPR, with most members of grad school, we are all of SPR. But these players who are playing at these tables, I bet they even don't know what stack means. Okay? Never mind the stack to pot ratio. But it calls with enough flush. I'm not sure if I just should have check folded the turn, which I think is a fair play, given credit for the double flush. Or check folded the river once you call my bet turn. I think both would have been better play. I think check folding the turn would have been best. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to end this video, and thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time on the next video.